The man on the television looks like Sigmund Freud. He might be one of his descendants, but more likely, he is merely cosplaying. From a psychological standpoint, he says, lending a gravitas to his words wholly incompatible with a morning talk show. The disappointment these children felt will likely linger with them for the rest of their lives. They were promised spaceships and wonder, and what they got instead... The man doesn't finish off his thoughts. He simply shrugs his shoulders. This elicits a laugh from both the other guests of the program and the moderator. Yes, the psychological implications of this disaster are both fascinating and terrifying. That's why we brought you on today, Doctor. Unlike the psychologist, the moderator of the show speaks in rapid-fire bursts designed to fit a time slot. She racks her notes with mechanical precision and clicks her pen in the direction of the studio screen. On the note of psychological effects, there's a particular aspect of Children's Sci-Fi Saturday that has garnered a lot of interest on social media. Can we pull up the clip? The still image that flashes up on the screen turns my blood cold. The psychologist starts to gather his thoughts in response, yet before he speaks, he's cut off by the other guest of the program. With all due respect, as the national representative of event organizers, I have to say something. Unlike the other two people in the studio, the man does not wear a suit. With his jeans and t-shirt and bright smile, he seems like relaxation personified. Yet there's a palpable annoyance in his voice. I think most people are entirely too focused on the poor choice of costume. Wearing that to a children's party is clearly inappropriate. This fascination with the creature though, my goodness, can we leave it be? The headline should be, Children's Sci-Fi Saturday was a terribly organized event. Not, look at the scary costume that terrified children. Past Relax Man's protest, the clip starts to play. That thing, that creature, that terrible masked specter who haunts my dreams and is responsible for the horror that is my waking life, it crawls up to a child and provokes an endless stream of tears. The creature with the mirror has provoked much speculation online. Some, as you, have deemed it to be a terrible idea of a costume, but there's a growing group of voices online that claim it to be a curse, he says, interrupting the moderator. The corners of his mouth are still raised, but his eyes have shed all trace of a smile. A curse, yes, I've read the comments myself. To those that claim the unknown is some sort of a running curse for event organizers, I have but one question. What century are you living in? The 15th or the 16th? Get real. There's no such thing as curses. That's just a man, or a woman, in a poorly chosen costume. We should leave it at that. The unknown? So the thing has a name? The moderator asks, as additional clips of the masked creature scaring children play on the screen. The last remnant of the guest's smile facsimile fall away. He scowls at her, as if she bumped into him in the subway. It doesn't. Just a costume. There's no curse or legend to it, he barks. I only called it the unknown because that's what the keyboard warriors are calling it. The tense moment at the studio lingers, but it doesn't last. Soon enough, the Freud impersonator starts to deliver a lecture about the abstract nature of the unknown and how humans are inherently scared of things without faces. The endless collection of cell phone footage flashes on the screen behind the psychologist. I turn off the TV and try to distract myself with thoughts unrelated to my predicament. I try to distract myself, but I can't. I can't stop thinking about the unknown. When I open my laptop, I am assailed by a mountain of email complaints, death threats, and genital pictures from outraged strangers on the internet. Their ire makes me sick with fear and guilt, but I don't dwell on it. Instead, I open up Google and start to research the topic that the man on the television demanded be avoided. I start to tug away at the string of conspiracy the fake smiling man insisted didn't exist. After an hour of browsing through deep web forums, I start to feel sane. After 2 hours, I realize I am not the first to have been afflicted by the curse of the unknown. Before the third hour of research is done, I've purchased a train ticket to the capital. I arrive at Carl's apartment in the late afternoon. I do not ring the doorbell this time. Instead, I wait for a dog walker to let me into the complex. I do not wait long. Within half an hour, I am standing at the door to Carl's unit. Again, I avoid the doorbell. Instead, I knock. "Food delivery!" I announce, in a voice as far from mine as I can muster. I hear someone move on the other side of the door, but it isn't until I knock again that Carl responds. I didn't order any food. My friend mumbles from behind the door. It's me, I say. The movement on the other side of the door stops. I know about the unknown, I add, hoping that it'll sway Carl. It does. It takes almost a minute, but once the silence lingers and I make it clear I am not retreating home, Carl opens up the door. I did lie about being a food delivery man, but I did bring food and drinks. 2 Chipotle cheeseburgers from Pavel's Bistro and a 6-pack of microbrew. To ease his mind, to make him more likely to talk, or, perhaps, listen. I come to Carl's apartment, bearing gifts for an old friend, hoping to remind him of our university years, yet the moment the door opens, the burgers and beer seem like a terrible joke. The Carl I know is gone. The man who stands before me is a mere shadow of the artist I had toured the factory with not 2 weeks ago. His eyes are sunk and suspicious, and his face bears no trace of friendship. Why are you here? He asks, through a crack in the door. The unknown, I say. It's following me too. His expression doesn't change the slightest bit, but after a moment, a long moment, he opens the door just a little wider so that I can enter. All the blinds of the apartment are pulled. The few rays of light that seep into the room bounce off of fragments of broken glass. As I walk, the carpet crunches under my feet. The once modern apartment looks like a cave of a madman, and, in a way, it is. Carl seems to hold no appetite for the burgers I bought, but the beer he accepts. In one swift motion, he flicks off the bottle cap with a lighter and drains half the drink. I only manage a couple sips from my own bottle. The rumbling train ride quickly catches up with my bladder. Don't worry, Carl says, tipping his beer in the direction of the bathroom. I broke the mirror. It's safe. The mirror in the bathroom is indeed broken, yet I face away from it regardless. The few fragments of it that hang above the sink still cast a reflection. I don't want to risk seeing myself. I don't want to risk seeing the thing that is following me. By the time I'm back in the living room, Carl has already finished his first beer. I try to avoid the topic of that incomprehensible monster. I try to have a casual chat with my friend before we are forced to discuss the unavoidable. Yet Carl is deaf to all my attempts at small talk. It's not a legend or an urban myth, Carl finally says, dislodging another bottle cap with his lighter. I wish it was. Oh, what I would give for the unknown to just be an old wives' tale. But it's not. The unknown is real, and it has us both within its grasp. I struggle to formulate my question, but a couple sips of the microbrew loosen my tongue. What is the unknown? I ask. Carl shrugs. No one knows. No one knows where it came from or how long it's been around. There are written records going back centuries. Some even say the unknown has been around for longer than humans have organized celebrations. No one really knows. No one knows the rules or the mechanics under which the creature operates. It just appears. All that is certain is that the thing will end any event planner's career and life. Life? I ask. Carl's tired eyes raise to meet mine. You've been seeing the reflection too, haven't you? After the thing whispers those terrible truths to you, it won't ever leave you. It will always be behind you, getting closer and closer until... An ambulance passes outside. Carl listens to the blaring siren, nodding his head along as if it were music. It isn't until the wail is blocks away that he speaks again. That night in the factory, the first time we met the unknown, I was in denial. For years, I heard whispered warnings. Look out for the unknown, the old-timers said. I just thought it was some dumb joke. But then I saw it. I saw it, and it touched me, and it whispered to me, and I still didn't believe any of the warnings. When I got to my parents' place, I went to my old room and stood in front of the mirror. They say not to do that. They say the unknown will get you faster if you look at your own reflection, but denial is a strong thing. I stared at the mirror and watched it get closer and closer. I watched the image in the reflection get clearer and clearer until it became undeniable. I think of it a few times I've seen the reflection myself. Those few glimpses in the rear view of the patrol car, that long stare in my bathroom mirror, that unnameable shimmer that I saw behind me made me uncomfortable beyond words. As I think of the being that has been pursuing us, I catch a glimpse of my own reflection in the beer bottle. Behind me, something shimmers. I quickly look away. "Do you remember what it whispered to you?" I ask. No. All I know is that it was bad news. A smile crosses Carl's lips. It's not a smile produced by joy or good tidings. It's the sort of grin only gallows humor produces. There's no understanding the unknown. It's beyond understanding. The words it said made sense in the moment when the thing spoke to our primal brains, but trying to make sense of them in a rational fashion? I think that's beyond us. There's no understanding the thing. All that is certain is that it appears, it follows, and eventually it takes you back to where it came from. Unless it doesn't, I say. What do you mean? Carl asks. We know that once you become a target for the unknown, it shows up to every event you organize, right? Carl, with more than a hint of suspicion, nods his head. So, we know how to get it out into the open, I say. That's a good first step. I tell Carl my plan. The research I have done into the unknown is limited to my frantic morning internet scroll, and much of the success hinges on uncertain presumptions, yet as I speak, Carl listens. His face softens. He even finds his appetite and reaches for the Chipotle cheeseburger I brought him. By the time I finish detailing my theory, the burger is gone. Carl is still pessimistic about our chances, but his spirits have raised. As I start eating my own burger, Carl picks up his phone and starts calling around. He tells his colleagues and associates what we are planning, but he obscures the why. Though some of the people Carl calls connect the dots and ask about whether the event is related to Children's Sci-Fi Saturday, most of them don't. Before the hour passes, we have a roster of people who can transform the old factory into a place of magic and wonder. Once he is done making his phone calls, Carl takes out a piece of paper and writes down all the contact details for his people, just in case something happens to him. I let my friend write down all the names and numbers, but I assure him we'll both make it through this ordeal. I appreciate your optimism, he says, cracking open a third beer. But there's no certainty here. We don't know if we can defeat the unknown. We don't know if it can be defeated. Either way, you have more time than I have. That first night, when I was trying to deny what had happened, I stared into the mirror for hours. I watched it get closer and closer until I could deny it no longer. I'm afraid my days are numbered. The impenetrable cloud of dread I found him in starts to descend on Carl once more. I do not allow it to consume him. To distract my friend, I change the subject of our conversation. I start talking about the misadventures of youth and inquiring about the regular characters of our long-gone escapades. My friend is morose at first, but with a couple of well-placed questions, he opens up. As the sun outside sets, we reminisce about the early 2000s and how much the world has changed over the past 2 decades. We drink and we eat, and for a moment, we forget about the unknown altogether. With lights turned on, the flat almost looks the way it did back in our wild days. The occasional shards of broken glass, however, make our present circumstance impossible to ignore. The thing that follows in the reflection, I say, as I drain the final bottle of beer, does it get any clearer? Solemnly, he nods. It's all beyond our comprehension. That's why it's so fuzzy when it's far. Our brain finds it easier to ignore, yet the closer it gets, the clearer the thing becomes. Seeing the darkness return to his face, I tell myself not to ask the question. The details are unimportant for our plan and will only darken the room once more. Consciously, I know the question is a bad idea. yet my lips move regardless. What does it look like? I ask. It's the unknown, but without the mask, Carl says, looking at his empty beer bottle. His fingers strip away at the label as he struggles to make his description. Pale, like a corpse. The thing is pale with a human face, but it has mouths. Many mouths. Many mouths, and... Carl goes silent. His fingers go still. His eyes go wide. His reflection stares back at him from the green glass of the beer bottle. A yelp of a scream, that is all he manages to get out. Carl screams in terror, and then, in a horrid sight that defies the laws of physics, he flings backwards into the couch and disappears. The beer bottle comes crashing to the floor. It sprinkles a fresh helping of broken glass over Carl's living room carpet. I am left in the apartment alone. The terror which sweeps through my body is unbearable. I immediately pick up my phone to report what I had witnessed, but it grows numb in my hands. There's no one to call. There's no one to help. Originally, the plan was for me to sleep at Carl's before going out to meet his associates, but being found in an apartment of a man freshly missing would put the entire plan in jeopardy. I do not have time to mourn the disappearance of my friend or try to make sense of it. With sorrow and terror brewing in my heart, I grab the paper with all the contact information for Carl's associates and flee to the train station. I spend the ride back home drenched in a terrified sweat. The sight of my childhood friend being plucked out of reality refuses to leave my mind's eye and keeps repeating over and over regardless of how much I try to distract myself. Every reflective surface, from the mirrors to the windows to the cup of coffee I am served on the train, taunts me with a similar fate. Worst of all, however, is the fact that I have lost my one true ally. Carl's contacts could help me lure the unknown back to the factory, but there is no way that I can destroy it on my own. The moment I find my seat, I lay my head on the table and stare at my feet. The prospect of catching a glimpse of myself in the reflection of the mirror is far too terrifying. Two men sit in the seats opposite to me, but I pay them no mind. My soul is far too tortured to think of how I might be perceived. As the train rumbles out of the capital, however, their idle chatter catches my attention. Their voices sound familiar. When I raise my head, it takes me a moment to recognize them. Sitting opposite me, dressed in civilian clothes, sit the two police officers. When they see me, they boom greetings and good cheer. Apparently, they are both seeing women in the capital and like to make the occasional trip together. With Carl missing, I don't go into the specifics of what my day entailed. I fear being somehow implicated in his disappearance. I don't mention the unknown, but they do. Man, I thought that masked creature you were talking about was just some elaborate prank or a weird metaphor, the one that likes to laugh says. But you were right, I saw the videos. That thing is terrifying. Poor kids. Poor kids, the stern one repeats. Things like that don't belong in our republic. If it was up to me, I'd shoot specters like that on sight. The thought takes a while to connect, but when it does, a weight is lifted off my shoulders. As the train drives back towards home and towards that old factory, I talk with the officers. I tell them my plan. Sup ghouls, it's me, Mike, the guy who writes these stories. Hope everyone enjoyed this part of the Unknown Saga. Final chapter should be dropping on this channel about this time next week. It's also available early on, you'll never guess this, patreon.com/MikeJLanger. On the United People series front, most of the stories have been finalized, aside from the first couple of tales. Still waiting on a couple more voices so that I can get to cutting. I think we're looking at a late May release, but I've been doing this for long enough to know not to give specific dates until the only thing that's left is to press publish. Once the Unknown series has finished its run, I'll massage the YouTube algorithm with compilations of the Neon Man, Wife-Licking Walls, and Spaghetti Monster series, but be assured, the United People series is imminent. Wish me luck. I'm looking at a crazy busy weekend where I'll be facilitating a big travel project with a bunch of my Indian friends. Here's to hoping that everything will go smoothly and that the mother of all cities will be kind to us. As usual, thank you for your support and patience, and an extra special thanks to patrons such as Bob Condrick, Dante Kincaid, Joyce, Matt, Mr. Creepypasta, Paul Evans, and Shion. See y'all next week. Hope everyone is safe, sane, and healthy out there.